Hi, welcome to Ahmed's World Time Trek. In this captivating video, we explore the highs and lows of Napoleon's life, from his triumphs on the battlefield to the complexities of his personal relationships. Join us as we unravel the story of a man who would shape history, experiencing the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the power of love. On February 7, 1794, Napoleon was appointed as the artillery commander of the Army of Italy. He participated in General Pierre d'Ambirion's campaign against the independent Kingdom of Piedmont in northwest Italy. Although the campaign resulted in 3 small victories, Napoleon's role was considered creditable but unremarkable. He fought alongside the skilled General André Massena, who earned the nickname the Darling Child of Victory, for his successful campaign to drive the Piedmontese from Ventimiglia and outflank the Austrians and Piedmontese at the Col di Tenda. After the campaign, Napoleon returned to Nice and Antibes, where he began to court Eugénie Désirée Clary, the 16-year-old daughter of a deceased royalist textile and soap millionaire. Their relationship primarily developed through correspondence, and they became engaged in April of 1795. In August 1794, Napoleon's brother Joseph married Désirée's elder sister Julie, bringing a substantial dowry of 400,000 francs that relieved the Bonaparte family's financial concerns. A year earlier, the 19-year-old Lucien Bonaparte had married Christine Boyer, a charming but illiterate 22-year-old daughter of an innkeeper. He had put his adopted revolutionary name, Brutus, on the wedding certificate, the only one of the Bonapartes to change his name in such a way. During April 1794, Napoleon submitted a strategic plan for the invasion of Italy via Piedmont to the Committee of Public Safety. In his plan, he advocated for concentrated attacks, the annihilation of Austria, and the adoption of a defensive system in Spain while pursuing an offensive approach on the Piedmontese frontier. Napoleon also expressed his desire for centralized authority, proposing the unity of the armies of the Alps and Italy under a single command. Napoleon's demanding nature and impatience became evident in his interactions with Major Berlier, his chef de bataillon. He expected efficiency and swift execution of orders, leaving no aspect of his command untouched by his attention to detail. Amidst these events, Napoleon received official confirmation of his promotion to brigadier general during the Piedmontese campaign. To protect himself during the turbulent times of the French Revolution, he answered "noble or not noble?" with a technically untrue negative response. The revolution itself was experiencing upheaval, with factions being guillotined and the reign of terror causing hardship in Paris. The city was ripe for a reaction against the Jacobins, who had so clearly failed to deliver either food or peace. With the Allies in retreat in 1794 in Spain and Belgium and along the Rhine, a group of Girondin conspirators felt confident enough to overthrow the Jacobins and finally end the reign of terror. During a 6-day period in mid-July, Napoleon participated in a secret mission to Genoa on behalf of Augustin Robespierre. His task was to report on the fortifications of Genoa, meet with the French charge d'affaires, Jean Tilly, and convince the Doge of the need for improved relations between France and Genoa. However, this mission drew Napoleon closer to the Robespierre's political circle at a dangerous time. On July 27, the Thermidorian reaction took place, leading to the overthrow of Maximilien Robespierre and the execution of both Robespierre brothers and many other members of the terrorists faction. If Napoleon had been in Paris at the time, he might have been arrested and sent to the guillotine as well. Fortunately, he had just returned from his brother's wedding and was at the army camp in Sieg near Nice when he learned of the Robespierre's fate. Napoleon expressed sympathy for the younger Robespierre, whom he had liked and believed to be honest. However, he also stated that if his own brother had aspired to tyranny, he would have personally stabbed him. Despite his connection to the Robespierres, Napoleon's arrest on August 9 was officially attributed to allegations that certain Marseillais believed his positioning of a battery was intended against them. In reality, his arrest was politically motivated. During his 10-day imprisonment at Fort Caire in Antibes, Napoleon's papers were searched by his fellow Corsican, Salicidi, who was motivated by self-preservation. However, Napoleon was released on August 20 due to a lack of evidence against him. His time in prison was not physically demanding, and he even appointed his former prison guard as a palace adjutant after coming to power. After his release, Napoleon resumed planning an expedition against Corsica and continued pursuing his romantic interest in Désirée Clary. He wrote letters to her, discussing literature, music, and intellectual development. Despite his general view of women as lesser beings, Napoleon showed a clear interest in Desiree and sought to engage her intellectually. His letters to her were not overly romantic but demonstrated his concentrated attention and affection. Napoleon's relationship with Desiree deepened over time, and by February 1795, he expressed his love for her. He subscribed to a clavichord journal on her behalf and expressed concern about her music lessons. His letters became more intimate, and he switched to using the familiar tu form of address. Napoleon was genuinely in love with Desiree Clary during this period. In March 1795, Napoleon set sail from Marseilles with a fleet of 15 ships, 1,174 guns, and 16,900 men in an attempt to recapture Corsica from Pasquale Paoli and the British. However, his expedition was quickly scattered by a British squadron of 15 ships with fewer guns and half the number of men. 2 French ships were captured, and Napoleon's attempt to regain Corsica was unsuccessful. Napoleon was not held responsible for the failure of the expedition, but it highlighted his weakness in naval matters. Throughout his career, he struggled with maritime strategy and did not achieve any significant victories at sea. Between 1793 and 1797, the French lost 125 warships to Britain's 38, including 35 capital vessels, ships of the line, to Britain's 11. Most of the losses suffered by the British were due to fire, accidents, and storms rather than French attacks. After the failed Corsican expedition, Napoleon found himself technically unemployed and ranked 139th on the list of French generals in terms of seniority. General Barthélemy Scherer, the new commander of the Army of Italy, was hesitant to include Napoleon in his ranks due to concerns about his inclination towards political intrigue. However, just 8 days after disembarking from the Corsican expedition, Napoleon was ordered to take command of the artillery in General Hoche's Army of the West, which was suppressing a royalist uprising in the Vendée region. Napoleon was not enthusiastic about this assignment, as he had already fought against the British and Piedmontese and did not relish the idea of fighting fellow Frenchmen. He left for Paris on May 8, 1795, hoping to secure a better posting. In Paris, he resided at the Hôtel de la Liberté and sought an audience with the acting war minister, Captain Aubry, to negotiate a more favorable position. However, Aubry offered him command of the infantry in the Vendée, which Napoleon considered an insult and refused. As a result, Napoleon lived in Paris without employment, surviving on half pay. He claimed illness to avoid being sent to the Vendée or being forced into retirement. These months were challenging for him, but he maintained a philosophical outlook, expressing his detachment from life and his trust in fate and destiny. He took the opportunity to enjoy the social life of Paris, although he felt uncomfortable in the company of women and was not considered conventionally attractive. Napoleon immersed himself in intellectual pursuits, attending public lectures, visiting the observatory, and enjoying theater and opera performances. He favored intellectual stimulation over social engagements and criticized fashionable Parisian salons and dandies. Despite his unconventional appearance and social discomfort, Napoleon made the most of his time in Paris and sought to broaden his knowledge and interests. During his journey to Paris in May 1795, Napoleon expressed his longing for Desiree, writing to her that he was saddened by the thought of being away from her for an extended period. At this point, Napoleon had saved enough money from his salary to consider purchasing a small chateau in Ragny, Burgundy. He even detailed the potential revenues he could generate from various cereal crops and described the chateau's dining room as 4 times the size of Casa Bonaparte's. Napoleon also mentioned his desire to start a family to his brother Joseph. In his letters to Desiree, Napoleon made attempts to incite jealousy by mentioning other women he encountered, but he professed his unwavering love for her. However, as time passed, it became apparent that Desiree's mother, Madame Clary, had discouraged further involvement between them. Napoleon's letters to Joseph revealed that he still loved Desiree, but he acknowledged that their relationship would be limited to affectionate esteem. Napoleon's self-pity over his unrequited love for Desiree, as well as his fraternal love for Joseph, led him to dissolve into tears while writing to Joseph on June 24. The letter, ostensibly about Joseph's plans to enter the Genoese olive oil trade, portrayed life as an empty dream that fades away. Napoleon requested Joseph's portrait, emphasizing their deep bond and the unity of their hearts. However, by July 12, he attempted to convince himself that he had moved on from Desiree. He criticized men who were excessively interested in women, dismissing love as an artificial sentiment born of society. Désiré's rejection contributed to Napoleon's cynicism towards women and love itself. On St. Helena, he defined love as an occupation for idle individuals, a distraction for warriors, and an obstacle for rulers. He expressed doubt about the existence of genuine love, considering it an artificial sentiment. Despite Désiré marrying General Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte and becoming the Queen of Sweden, Napoleon retained a place for her in his heart. In early August, Napoleon continued to seek a position with the artillery of the Army of Italy, but he also contemplated an offer to go to Turkey and modernize the Sultan's artillery. There were indications that the Russians were also interested in enlisting Napoleon to aid them in their conflict against the Turks. Additionally, Napoleon entertained the idea of joining the East India Company's army, primarily for financial benefits. The situation reached a critical point in mid-August when the War Ministry demanded that Napoleon appear before its medical board to verify his claimed illness. Napoleon sought the assistance of his political contacts, including Barras and Fréron, to avoid the examination. Eventually, he secured a position in the Historical and Topographical Bureau of the War Ministry, which was responsible for coordinating French military strategy. Napoleon's attachment to this bureau provided him with a sense of accomplishment and direction in his career. The Topographical Bureau was a small, highly efficient organization within the War Ministry that has been described as the most sophisticated planning organization of its day. Set up by Carnot and reporting directly to the committee, it took information from the commanders-in-chief, plotted troop movements, prepared detailed operational directives, and coordinated logistics. Under Clark, the senior staff included Generals Jean-Gerard Lequeuille, César Gabriel Berthier, and Pierre-Victor Houdon, all talented and dedicated strategists. Napoleon could hardly have been better placed to learn all the necessary strands of supply, support and logistics that make up strategy, although the word entered the military lexicon only in the early 19th century and was not one Napoleon ever used. Between mid-August and early October 1795, short but intellectually intense, was when Napoleon learned the practicalities of strategic warfare, as distinct from the tactical battle fighting at which he had excelled at Toulon. Napoleon's military success was ultimately down to his own genius and capacity for gruelingly hard work, but France had some exceptionally talented military thinkers and bureaucrats at this time, able to teach him and ultimately to do the detailed work necessary to put his ideas into practice. The Topographical Bureau was also the best place to make his own estimations of which generals were worthwhile and which expendable. The Bureau didn't decide overall grand strategy, that was done by the politicians on the Committee of Public Safety, which was highly vulnerable to factional struggles. The debate over whether, where and when to cross the Rhine to attack Austria in 1795, for example, had to be fought out there, with the Bureau merely giving advice on each option. In August, any plans to fight for, or indeed against, Turkey were quashed by the committee, which also ordained that Napoleon couldn't leave the country until the end of the war. He still had problems from different bureaucracies within the ministry over whether he was active or retired, and on September 15 he was even struck off the list of serving generals. "I have fought like a lion for the Republic," he wrote to his friend the actor François-Joseph Talma, "and in recompense she leaves me dying of hunger." He was soon reinstated. Clisson et Eugénie is a short novella written by Napoleon during his time as the head of the Topographical Bureau. The story follows the protagonist, Clisson, who is portrayed as a heroic and virtuous character. Clisson's love interest, Eugénie, is introduced, and they quickly fall deeply in love with each other. They marry, have children, and live a happy life together, admired by others for their generosity. However, their happiness is short-lived when Clisson is called to Paris for an important mission. He leaves Eugénie in the care of one of his officers, Berville, while he recovers from a serious injury. During this time, Eugénie betrays Clisson by sleeping with Berville. When Clisson learns about the affair, he is understandably hurt and wants to seek revenge. However, he feels torn between his duty to the army and his desire for vengeance. In the end, Clisson chooses to meet his fate on the battlefield, writing an emotional letter to Eugénie before his death. The story is filled with melodrama, sentimentality, and clichés, reflecting Napoleon's emotional state at the time of writing. Despite its flaws, Clisson et Eugénie is seen as a manifestation of Napoleon's incipient romanticism, showcasing his imagination and literary aspirations. It's worth noting that the story underwent numerous revisions and drafts, indicating Napoleon's dedication to refining his work. In the second half of 1795, France was in a precarious position as the Girondin leaders recognized the need for a new constitution to move past the Jacobin terror. The Royalists and opponents of the revolution and the Republic saw this moment of reform as an opportunity to strike. Austria launched a counterattack, and the enemies of the Republic conspired to overthrow the new government by smuggling arms and ammunition into Paris. The insurrection was focused in the sections, which were districts of Paris that controlled local assemblies and National Guard units. Although only 7 sections actually revolted, National Guardsmen from other sections joined in. The rebels consisted of various groups, including middle-class National Guardsmen, Royalists, moderates, liberals, and ordinary Parisians who opposed the government due to corruption and failures. Despite their differing political views, they united against the new government. General Jacques-François Monod, who was initially relied upon by the convention to suppress the insurrection, attempted to negotiate with the sections to avoid bloodshed. However, the leaders of the convention saw this as treachery and had him arrested. With time running out, the Girondins appointed Paul Barras, one of their leaders, to command the Army of the Interior and entrusted him with saving the revolution. On October 4, 1795, Barras appointed Napoleon as second-in-command of the Army of the Interior. Napoleon quickly took charge and deployed troops and artillery strategically throughout Paris. He prepared to use grapeshot, a devastating type of ammunition, against the insurgents. When the rebels began their attack, Napoleon unleashed a heavy artillery response and used grapeshot against those attempting to cross the bridges over the Seine. The fighting lasted for several hours until the rebels were defeated. The use of grapeshot and the ruthlessness displayed by Napoleon during the suppression of the insurrection came to be known as the whiff of grapeshot. The Paris mob was effectively neutralized, and they played no significant role in French politics for the next 3 decades. It's important to note that there are differing accounts and interpretations of the events of 13 Vendémiaire, the name of the day in the French revolutionary calendar. Some sources, like General Jean Sarazin's book, claim that Napoleon was excessively cruel during the suppression, but these accounts are considered part of the black legend that emerged around Napoleon following the events of Vendémiaire. The heavy rainfall on the night of 13 Vendémiaire washed away the blood from the streets, but the memory of the event remained. Napoleon's involvement in the conflict elevated his status and led to his promotion. He was first promoted to General de Division by Barras and then appointed commander of the Army of the Interior. This recognition was due to his service in saving the Republic and potentially preventing civil war. It is ironic that he had initially refused a post in the Vendée because he didn't want to kill Frenchmen, but his involvement in the events of Vendémiaire resulted in a significant promotion. Napoleon's promotion brought great benefits to his family as well. He received a substantial salary, and his brothers Joseph and Louis were also given positions and opportunities for advancement. Even the youngest brother, Jerome, was sent to a better school. Napoleon ensured that his family would not want for anything for the next 2 decades. After Vendémiaire, Napoleon's appearance and lifestyle underwent a transformation. He started living in a respectable house and traveled in a fine carriage. His physical appearance also changed, with his emaciated thinness giving way to a fuller face and healthier complexion. He became more affable, and the nickname Puss in Boots was no longer used to refer to him. In the aftermath of Vendémiaire, Napoleon took charge of various tasks. He closed down the opposition Pantheon Club, expelled crypto-royalists from the War Ministry, and oversaw the policing of theatrical productions. He also reported to the government about the behavior of audiences in Parisian theaters. Additionally, he was responsible for the confiscation of civilian weaponry, which led to his encounter with Marie-Joseph Rose Tacher de la Pagerie, the widow de Beauharnais, whom he would later marry and call Josephine. Josephine came from a noble family with roots in Martinique. She arrived in Paris at a young age and married General Vicomte Alexander de Beauharnais. Although their marriage was abusive, Josephine tried to save her husband from the guillotine during the Reign of Terror. She was imprisoned herself and endured harsh conditions in the crypt underneath the Church of Saint Joseph de Carmes. Her husband was executed shortly before Robespierre's fall, and Josephine survived because of her illness at the time. The events of Vendémiaire and the subsequent changes in Napoleon's life and the elevation of his family marked a significant turning point in his career and personal life. Josephine, after enduring the traumatic experiences of the Reign of Terror, may have suffered from a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. Her subsequent behavior, such as indulging in sexual relationships, involving herself in questionable business dealings, and enjoying a luxurious lifestyle, can be understood in light of the hardships she had endured. Despite being often portrayed as shallow and extravagant, Josephine had a good cultural taste, particularly in music and the decorative arts. She was also known for her generosity, although she often used public funds for her generosity. Josephine was considered a skilled diplomat and possessed unique social tact, as acknowledged by diplomats of the time. After her release from prison, Josephine had affairs with General Lazare Hoche and Paul Barras, seeking protection and stability from them. However, these relationships did not last long. When she sent her son to Napoleon's headquarters to inquire about keeping her late husband's sword, Napoleon saw an opportunity for social interaction and quickly fell in love with Josephine. Their shared experiences as outsiders, immigrants, islanders, and former political prisoners created a certain bond between them. Initially, Josephine was not attracted to Napoleon's physical appearance, but as her own looks faded and she faced financial difficulties, she eventually accepted his proposal. Josephine was meticulous about her appearance, regularly putting effort into her makeup and clothing. She was charming and affable, though not particularly witty or intelligent. Talleyrand once remarked that no one had managed so well without intelligence. Napoleon valued her political connections, her social status, and her ability to compensate for his lack of social skills. While Napoleon struggled with conversation and often made inappropriate remarks, Josephine was well connected in Parisian society and had access to influential political salons. Napoleon and Josephine married in a civil ceremony in 1796. Josephine wore a white muslin wedding dress with a Republican tricolor sash, and Napoleon arrived 2 hours late. The witnesses included Barras, Jean Lemeroys, Napoleon's aide-de-camp, the Taulines, Josephine's children Eugene and Hortense, among others. To minimize their 6-year age difference, both Napoleon and Josephine lied about their ages in the marriage register. As a wedding gift, Napoleon gave Josephine a gold enameled medallion engraved with the words, "To Destiny." Overall, Josephine's life and choices can be understood in the context of her experiences and the challenges she faced during the tumultuous period of the French Revolution. The reason Napoleon was late for his own wedding and had a short honeymoon was because he received a significant promotion just days before the wedding. On March 2, 1796, Barras and the other members of the Directory, France's executive government at the time, granted Napoleon command of the Army of Italy. Barras convinced his colleagues to choose Napoleon for the campaign in the Ligurian Alps by highlighting his Corsican background and claiming that he was accustomed to scaling mountains since birth, even though Napoleon was actually from a coastal town. In the 9 days between receiving the appointment and departing for his headquarters in Nice on March 11, Napoleon requested every available book, map, and atlas on Italy from the War Ministry. He diligently studied biographies of previous commanders who had fought in Italy and acknowledged his own lack of knowledge on certain subjects. Napoleon's thirst for knowledge and his willingness to admit his ignorance impressed his fellow officers. On March 11, 1796, Napoleon left Paris in a post-chaise, accompanied by Junot and Chauvet, the new chief ordonnateur of the Army of Italy. During his journey south, Napoleon wrote a letter to Josephine on March 14 from Chanceaux, and in that letter, he dropped the U from his surname. Previously, his name had appeared as Bonaparte when it was first mentioned in the state newspaper, the Moniteur Universel, in 1794. By Gallicizing his name, Napoleon aimed to emphasize his French identity over his Italian and Corsican roots, further distancing himself from his past. Overall, these events mark a significant turning point in Napoleon's career and his efforts to establish himself as a French military leader. He reached Nice in 15 days. When someone made the rather otiose point that he was very young, at 26, to command an army, Napoleon replied, "I shall be old when I return." As we conclude this journey through Napoleon's life in 1794 to 1796, we witness the ebb and flow of fortune that defined his path. From the heights of military success, failures to the depths of personal struggles, these years laid the foundation for the legend that would become Napoleon Bonaparte. Thank you for joining us on this captivating exploration of loss, victory, and love in the life of one of history's most enigmatic figures. Don't forget to like and subscribe.